The morning sky over New Haven was perfect. Commander Park Juno stood on the observation deck of the defense station, watching the twin suns rise over the wheat fields below. 3 years he had been stationed here, 3 peaceful years watching farmers build their lives on this distant world. His coffee had just reached the perfect temperature when the alarm started screaming. "Commander, we have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace," the sensor operator's voice cracked with fear. 15 ships, no, 20, 30 contacts and, still counting. Park Juno's coffee cup shattered on the floor as he ran to the command center. The holographic display showed a nightmare. 40 warships surrounded the planet, their signatures matching the Vracan Dominion. His blood went cold. The Vracan were one of the oldest military powers in the galaxy, their empires spanning hundreds of worlds. New Haven was just a farming colony with 80,000 civilians and, exactly 12 defense satellites. "Open all communication channels," he ordered, his voice steady despite the terror building in his chest. "This is Commander Park Juno of Earth Defense Force. You are in violation of Galactic Council space. State your intentions immediately." The response came in the form of plasma fire. The defense satellite simply ceased to exist, vaporized in seconds. The Vracan fleet began orbital bombardment without warning, without negotiation, without mercy. Dr. Choi Mira was in her laboratory when the first bombs hit. She was studying native plant life, trying to develop crops that would grow better in the alien soil. The explosion threw her across the room. When she pulled herself up, blood running down her face, she could see fires spreading across the research district. Her hands shook as she activated her communicator. "Hyun-woo. Hyun-woo, can you hear me?" Her husband worked in the Eastern Agricultural Zone with their 2 daughters. Static answered her. Then, screaming. Then, nothing. Commander Park Juno made the hardest decision of his life. Begin evacuation protocol. Get everyone to the transport ships. Move now. He knew they could not save everyone. The math was simple and cruel. 6 transport ships, capacity of 8,000 each. 80,000 colonists. They would save less than half. The Vracan ground forces landed 2 hours later. Park Juno watched on the security feeds, helpless and raging. The alien soldiers were methodical. They went building to building, shooting anyone they found. Men, women, children. It did not matter. When human survivors tried to surrender, waving white cloths and raising their hands, the Vracan executed them where they stood. Dr. Choi Mira ran through the burning streets, searching desperately for her family. She found them in a shelter that had taken a direct hit. Her husband's body shielded their daughters, but it had not been enough. She knelt in the ash and screamed until her voice gave out, clutching what remained of her world. Ambassador Kong Daeho received the emergency transmission on Unity Prime, the massive space station that housed the Galactic Council. He had been preparing for a routine trade negotiation. Instead, he found himself staring at footage of New Haven burning, watching human beings hunted through streets they had built with their own hands. He ran to the council chambers, demanding an emergency session. The councilors arrived slowly, annoyed at the interruption. They represented 847 civilized worlds, species that had known peace for centuries. War was something they studied in history files, not something that happened in real space. The Vracan Dominion has attacked New Haven without provocation, Ambassador Kang's voice shook with rage and grief. 67,000 civilians are dead. They are still killing survivors as we speak. The council must act immediately. Councillor Velthanes, a being who had served for 300 years, regarded the human ambassador with something like pity. Ambassador Kong, we understand your distress. However, the council cannot intervene in every territorial dispute. The Vracan claimed that human expansion into that sector violated their historical boundaries. Historical boundaries? Kong could not believe what he was hearing. They are murdering children. We followed every council protocol for colonization. New Haven was approved by this very body 5 years ago. Yes, well, these matters are complex, another counselor said, waving a tentacle dismissively. We will form a committee to investigate the competing claims. In the meantime, we encourage both parties to exercise restraint. Restraint? Ambassador Kang's hands clenched into fists. Restraint? There is nothing left to restrain. They killed 67,000 people. They are still killing. You must authorize a peacekeeping force. You must hold them accountable. The council voted. 42 in favor of forming an investigative committee. 305 abstaining. 0 votes for immediate intervention. The council session adjourned for lunch. Commander Park Juno's transports escaped with 48,000 survivors. 32,000 remained behind, dead or dying. He sat in the command chair as they jumped to hyperspace, watching New Haven disappear behind them. The Vraken had bombed the planet for 6 hours straight. From orbit, it looked like a dying ember. Dr. Choi Mira was on one of the transports. She sat in the cargo hold, staring at nothing, her mind unable to process the loss. Around her, people wept. Children called for parents who would never answer. The lucky ones had gone into shock. The news reached Earth 3 days later. The planet went silent. Every screen showed the footage. Burning cities. Bodies in the streets. Vraken soldiers laughing as they executed teenagers who had tried to hide in a school. The Galactic Council's response statement, offering thoughts and condolences but taking no action. Something fundamental shifted in humanity that day. They had joined the Galactic Council 30 years ago, eager to take their place among the stars. They had followed every rule, accepted every restriction, believed in the promise of civilized cooperation. They had been peaceful because they thought peace was protected by law and justice. The Vraken taught them a hard truth. In the real galaxy, peace existed only for those strong enough to enforce it. The Council's laws meant nothing if no one would uphold them. Thoughts and condolences would not bring back the dead. The Unified Terran Authority convened in emergency session. Every nation on Earth, every faction, every political party that had spent decades arguing about everything suddenly, agreed on one thing. This would not stand. This could not stand. They sent one final message to the Galactic Council. Ambassador Kong Daeho delivered it personally, his face carved from stone. Earth hereby withdraws from all Galactic Council protocols effective immediately. We asked you for justice. You gave us bureaucracy. We asked you for protection. You gave us committees. We will seek our own justice now. Consider this your only warning. Stay out of our way. He walked out of the council chambers and never looked back. On Earth, every shipyard began working triple shifts. Every factory retooled for war production. Humanity pulled out military doctrines that the galaxy had long forgotten, strategies from the days when humans fought each other with nuclear weapons and chemical warfare. They remembered what the civilized galaxy had forgotten. Sometimes, the only way to ensure peace is to be capable of terrifying war. Commander Park Juno stood in the military headquarters, looking at the battle plans. Dar. Choi Mira stood beside him, her grief transformed into something cold and focused. She had joined the military planning division, applying her scientific mind to a new purpose, ending the Vraken threat permanently. They wanted to see what humans are capable of, she said quietly. Let us show them. The galaxy would soon learn that humanity had not forgotten how to bare its teeth. New Haven would be remembered. And the Vraken would pay for every single life they had taken. 3 months passed since New Haven burned. The Galactic Council expected protests, legal filings, perhaps a few angry speeches. Instead, Earth went completely silent. No communications, no diplomatic contact, no trade missions. The human embassy on Unity Prime stood empty. Ships traveling to Earth found themselves politely but firmly turned away at the border. The galaxy watched with mild curiosity. Most species assumed humanity was grieving, perhaps reconsidering their place among the stars. The Vracan Dominion celebrated their easy victory, already planning which human colony to target next. They did not understand that silence could be more terrifying than screams. Admiral Lee Bora stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, Earth's newest warship. Around her, 200 vessels floated in the darkness beyond Pluto, completely invisible to any scanner the galaxy possessed. Stealth technology had been banned by the Council centuries ago as unsporting. Earth did not care about sporting anymore. "Status report," she commanded. "All ships ready, Admiral," her tactical officer replied. "Ghost Protocol teams report successful insertion on targets 7 through 12. Captain Yoon is awaiting your signal." Lee Bora allowed herself a cold smile. Captain Yoon Taemin was somewhere deep in Vracan space right now, along with 50 other special operations teams. They had been inserted through methods the galaxy would never expect because the Council had forgotten that war could be fought with more than just ships shooting at each other in open space. Huang Suji worked in the Tactical Analysis Center buried deep beneath Seoul. She had not slept properly in 3 months. Every waking moment was spent planning, calculating, studying everything known about the Vracan military. She was Dr. Choi Myra's younger sister, and she had watched the footage of New Haven more times than she could count. Each viewing made her more focused, more precise, more absolutely certain of what needed to happen. "The fuel depot at Vracan Station 7, she said, pointing at the holographic display. "It supplies their entire 4th Fleet. Captain Yoon's team can reach it, but we need to make it look like an accident." The general nodded. "Can it be done?" "Hydrogen fuel is extremely volatile," Suji said. "A small sabotage to the magnetic containment system, combined with a solar flare we can predict and, they cannot, will result in a cascade failure. Their own investigators will conclude it was a maintenance error combined with natural phenomena. Do it." 6 days later, Vracan Station 7 exploded. 4 million tons of hydrogen fuel detonated, destroying the station and crippling the Vracan 4th Fleet's ability to operate in that sector. The Vracan investigation concluded exactly what Suji had predicted: maintenance failure during a solar event. They never suspected sabotage. It was the first of many accidents. A communications relay suffered what appeared to be radiation damage from a nearby pulsar. A weapons factory experienced a containment failure that the Vracan safety inspectors blamed on substandard construction. 3 ammunition depots exploded over a 2-week period, each incident appearing unrelated and caused by different technical failures. The Vracan High Command grew suspicious, but they had no proof. No witnesses, no evidence of tampering, no signs of human involvement. Their ships began disappearing during routine patrols. One day a destroyer was on schedule, transmitting normal status reports. The next day, it simply was not there anymore. No debris field, no distress signal, no survivors. Just empty space where a warship should have been. Captain Yoon Taemin led his team through the maintenance tunnels of a Vracan orbital platform. They moved in complete silence, using equipment that made them invisible to sensors and nearly invisible to the naked eye. The Vracan guards never knew they were there. The humans had learned guerrilla warfare fighting each other for thousands of years. The Vracan had never faced an enemy that refused to stand and fight in the open. They planted their devices and left. 12 hours later, the platform's reactor destabilized and vented radiation across 3 levels. The Vracan evacuated, abandoning a strategic position that controlled a key hyperspace junction. Human investigators would eventually discover the cleverness of it. The reactor had not been destroyed or damaged. It had simply been made to appear dangerous, forcing evacuation without the massive explosion that would have drawn attention. The Vraken appealed to the Galactic Council, claiming they were under attack by terrorists. They presented their evidence: destroyed facilities, missing ships, disrupted operations across their entire empire. The council investigated and found nothing. No proof of human involvement, no military fleet movements, no declaration of war. Just a series of unfortunate accidents and mysterious disappearances. Councillor Velthanis privately thought the Vraken were becoming paranoid. After all, civilized species did not wage war through sabotage and deception. That would be dishonorable. The pattern continued for 6 weeks. The Vraken military was bleeding from 1,000 invisible cuts. Their logistics network was in chaos, their commanders jumping at shadows, their soldiers afraid to go on patrol because ships kept vanishing into the void. Then came the incident that changed everything. A Vraken patrol encountered a human cargo ship drifting in neutral space. The ship appeared damaged, its engines cold, life support minimal. The patrol captain ordered boarding, thinking they might finally have evidence of human activity in the region. Perhaps even prisoners to interrogate. The boarding team found the cargo hold empty except for a single object in the center. A metal table. On the table, written in still wet Vraken blood, were words in the Vraken language: New Haven remembers. Run. The boarding team leader activated his communicator to report this finding. He never got the chance to speak. The cargo ship's reactor went critical, not from malfunction but from deliberate overload. The explosion vaporized the patrol ship and the boarding team instantly. A second patrol ship nearby was crippled by the blast, its hull breached in dozens of places. The survivors broadcast everything before they died. The footage spread across the galaxy within hours. The message written in Vraken blood. The deliberate trap. The calculated murder of an entire patrol. Suddenly, everyone understood. Humanity was not grieving. Humanity was hunting. Admiral Lee Bora watched the galactic news coverage with satisfaction. The trap had served its purpose. The galaxy now knew that Earth was coming, and fear was a weapon as powerful as any bomb. Deploy the fleet, she ordered. It is time to stop hiding. 200 human warships appeared at the edge of Vraken space, materializing from stealth in a coordinated maneuver that should have been impossible. The Vraken sensors went insane, alarms screaming across every military installation within range. The ships were not like anything in the Council databases. Sleek, deadly, bristling with weapons that the Vraken did not recognize. Admiral Lee Bora's message broadcast on every frequency, in every language, to every corner of the galaxy: people of the Vraken Dominion. You have 72 hours to surrender those responsible for the New Haven massacre. Every officer who gave the order, every soldier who pulled a trigger, every official who sanctioned the attack. Refuse, and you will learn what human vengeance truly means. This is your only warning. We will not negotiate. We will not forgive. We will have justice, or we will have blood. Choose carefully. The transmission ended. The human fleet waited, silent and menacing, at the border of Vraken space. On Unity Prime, the Galactic Council erupted into chaos. Emergency sessions were called. Ambassadors shouted at each other across the chamber. Some demanded Earth be stopped. Others pointed out that Earth had not actually attacked yet, merely threatened. A few quietly wondered if perhaps the Vraken deserved what was coming. Councillor Velthanis tried to contact Admiral Lee Bora, offering to mediate. His messages went unanswered. Earth was done talking to the Council. The Vraken High Command met in emergency session. Some advocated for surrender, arguing that losing a few officers was better than war with a species that had demonstrated such capability for ruthless tactics. Others called for mobilization, insisting that surrendering to threats would destroy their empire's credibility. The Vraken War leader made the final decision. We are the Vraken Dominion. We do not bow to threats from primitives. Mobilize the Grand Fleet. We will crush these humans and burn their homeworld as they burned New Haven. Let them see what real power looks like. 500 Vraken warships began converging on the border, the largest military fleet assembled in 800 years. The galaxy watched, holding its breath, as two species rushed toward a battle that would change everything. In her analysis center on Earth, Huang Suji studied the Vraken fleet composition and smiled. They were doing exactly what she predicted. They thought in terms of honor and direct confrontation. They were about to learn that humans fought to win, and honor was something you could afford only after your enemy was defeated. They are coming, she reported to Admiral Lee Bora. Good, the Admiral replied. Let them come. It is time to teach the galaxy what happens when you slaughter human children and expect no consequences. The countdown to the Battle of Crimson Nebula had begun. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the first of its kind in 800 years. The last time the chambers had been filled with this many species, this much tension, there had been a plague threatening to wipe out half the known galaxy. Today, the threat was not disease. It was war, real war, the kind that most council members had only read about in historical archives. Councillor Velthanes called the session to order, his 300 years of experience failing to hide the nervousness in his voice. We convene to address the escalating situation between the Vraken Dominion and humanity. The Vraken delegation has requested council intervention. The Vraken War leader stood, his massive form towering over most other species present. The human terrorists have destroyed our facilities, murdered our soldiers, and now threaten invasion. They use tactics forbidden by council law. Stealth technology. Sabotage. Ambush. These are the actions of savages, not civilized beings. The council must condemn Earth and authorize military action to stop them. Murmurs ran through the chamber. Many species nodded in agreement. The humans had indeed violated numerous council conventions on warfare. War was supposed to be conducted honorably, in open space, with proper declarations and rules of engagement. Then, the human delegation entered. Kim Hanna was nothing like Ambassador Kong Daeho. Where he had been diplomatic and patient, she was cold and precise. She had been a military prosecutor before this assignment, someone who spent her career putting war criminals on trial. Behind her walked Commander Park Juno and Dr. Choi Mira, both wearing their grief-like armor. Councillor Velthanes, Kim Hanna said, her voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. Before we discuss what humanity has done, perhaps we should discuss what was done to humanity. She activated a holographic display. The council chamber filled with images from New Haven. Not sanitized reports, not dry statistics, but actual footage. Children running from explosions. Families executed in their homes. Hospitals bombed while clearly marked with medical symbols. Vraken soldiers laughing as they hunted teenagers through burning streets. 67,000 civilians, Kim Hanna said. That is not a military target. That is not a strategic objective. That is genocide. And, where was the council? Where was the emergency session? Where was the immediate intervention? Councillor Velthanes shifted uncomfortably. Ambassador Kim, we offered condolences and formed an investigative committee. Condolences, Commander Park Juno spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but filled with rage. You offered condolences while the screams of burning children still echoed in our ears. You formed a committee while the Vraken broadcast footage of their massacre as entertainment. Dr. Choi Mira stepped forward. Her hands shook as she held up a small stuffed toy, burned and covered in ash. This belonged to my daughter. She was 7 years old. She loved drawing pictures of aliens, dreaming of the day she could visit other worlds and make friends across the galaxy. A Vrakan soldier shot her while she tried to hide under her bed. Then, they burned her body along with everything else. The silence in the council chamber was absolute. Many counselors looked away, unable to meet her eyes. You want to discuss honor? Kim Hana's voice rose. You want to discuss civilized warfare? You let them murder 67,000 innocents and did nothing. Nothing. You sat here in your comfortable station, filing paperwork and forming committees while human blood watered alien soil. And now you dare to judge us for fighting back. The Vrakan war leader slammed his fist on his podium. They attacked without formal declaration of war. They use forbidden technologies. They refuse to fight honorably. Honor, Kim Hana laughed, bitter and cold. You speak of honor while your soldiers gun down families begging for mercy. You speak of rules while you started this war without provocation. We did not ask for this fight. We asked for justice from this council. You refused. So we will take our justice ourselves, and we will take it in the only language you seem to understand. Councillor Karaxi, a younger member from a trade-focused species, spoke up. Ambassador Kim, surely you understand that escalating to full military conflict will only lead to more death. The council can still mediate. Commander Park Juno interrupted. Where was meditation when we needed it? 3 months ago, we stood before this council and begged for intervention. You voted against it. You chose bureaucracy over justice. You chose comfort over action. Now you ask us to trust you to mediate. That trust is dead, buried with 67,000 of our people. The Vrakan delegation demanded the floor. Their spokesman, dripping with arrogance, addressed the council. The humans show their primitive nature. They cannot accept that New Haven was in disputed territory. They refuse to acknowledge our historical claims. They attack instead of negotiate because they are warlike savages who do not belong among civilized species. Dr. Choi Mira stepped forward again. When she spoke, her voice was controlled, scientific, absolutely devastating. Historical claims. Let me present the actual facts since the Vrakan seem allergic to truth. New Haven was approved for colonization by this council 5 years ago. We filed every required document. We waited the mandatory review period. We received unanimous approval. The Vrakan representative himself voted yes. She pulled up the voting records. There were no disputed claims. No territorial objections. Nothing. They attacked because they wanted to test the council's response. They wanted to see if they could murder humans without consequence. Lies, the Vrakan spokesman hissed. Documents do not lie, Kim Hana said. Unlike the Vrakan, apparently. Every claim they made to justify New Haven's destruction is false. Every excuse is manufactured. They committed genocide because they believed humanity was weak and the council was toothless. They were wrong about the first part. They were right about the second. Councillor Velthanes tried to regain control of the session. Regardless of the regrettable events at New Haven, the council must establish that warfare cannot be conducted through sabotage and terrorism. There are conventions you do not enforce, Kim Hana said. Conventions that apparently do not protect human civilians. Conventions that only matter when humans violate them, not when we are the victims. Tell me, Counselor, did the Vrakan follow conventions when they bombed hospitals? Did they honor rules of engagement when they executed children? The Vrakan war leader stood again. Enough of this theater. The council must act. The human fleet threatens our border. They have given us an ultimatum. This is unacceptable aggression. We demand the council authorize defensive action and sanction Earth for its violations. Commander Park Juno walked to the center of the chamber. He looked older than his years, haunted by what he had witnessed and failed to prevent. When he spoke, Every being present felt the weight of his words. I watched New Haven burn. I listened to the screams on the communication channels as people died. I made the choice of who to save and who to leave behind because we did not have enough ships to evacuate everyone. I carry those names with me every single day. He paused, looking directly at Counselor Velthanes. We came to you for help. We believed in this council, in the promise of civilized cooperation and mutual protection. You taught us a valuable lesson. You taught us that in this galaxy, justice exists only for those strong enough to take it. Peace exists only for those capable of war. Words and laws mean nothing without the will to enforce them. He turned to face the Vrakan delegation. You wanted to see what humans are capable of when pushed to the edge. You burned our children and thought we would simply accept it. You thought we would file complaints and wait for committees that never act. You were wrong. We are capable of terrible things when given no other choice. And we choose to ensure that no other species, human or alien, ever suffers what happened to New Haven while the council sits idle. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species demanded Earth be sanctioned immediately. Others, particularly smaller ones who had their own grievances with larger powers, began to question why the council had not acted to prevent New Haven in the first place. The unity that had held the council together for centuries was fracturing in real time. Counselor Caraxi stood, calling for attention. Perhaps the humans have a point. Our peace has endured not because we are civilized, but because we have forgotten what happens when injustice goes unanswered. The council failed to protect New Haven. We failed to deliver justice. Now we face the consequences of our failure. Weakness, the Vrakan war leader spat. The council shows weakness by even debating this. We have mobilized 500 warships to crush the human threat. We do not need council permission to defend ourselves. Defend yourselves. Kim Hanna's smile was sharp as broken glass. You mobilize 500 ships to attack 200. That is not defense. That is extermination. But, please, do proceed. Admiral Lee Bora is waiting for you. Our fleet awaits your grand armada. We will show the galaxy what happens when you force humans to remember how to wage total war. The Vrakan delegation stormed out of the chamber, heading to join their fleet. Counselor Velthanes called for order, called for calm, called for negotiation. No one was listening anymore. Kim Hanna gathered her delegation to leave. Before she reached the exit, Counselor Caraxi approached. Ambassador Kim, please. There must be a way to prevent this battle. The loss of life will be catastrophic. There was a way, Kim Hanna said quietly. It was called justice. It was called protection. It was called the Galactic Council doing its job. That way died with New Haven. Now there is only one way forward. Through fire and blood, we will teach this galaxy that human lives matter. That civilians deserve protection. That genocide has consequences. She paused at the doorway. You want to prevent catastrophic loss of life? Then, pray the Vrakan accept our terms. Because if they refuse, if they choose to fight, we will not stop until every single being responsible for New Haven faces justice. Council approval or not. Galactic conventions or not. We will have our justice, and, heaven help anyone who stands in our way. The human delegation departed. Behind them, the council dissolved into chaos. The old order was dying. 800 years of comfortable peace built on unenforced rules and toothless diplomacy was collapsing. A new era was beginning, written in fire and blood. And, at the edge of Vrakan space, two fleets prepared for battle that would determine whether justice still meant anything in the galaxy. The Crimson Nebula was a massive stellar nursery, a region of space where new stars were being born. Gas clouds glowed red and orange, radiation levels were dangerously high, and visibility was terrible. It was exactly the kind of place that civilized species avoided for military engagements. The Vrakan fleet entered it anyway because honor demanded they meet the human challenge directly. Admiral Lee Bora studied the tactical display on the bridge of her flagship. 500 Vrakan warships had arranged themselves in a traditional battle formation, 3 lines deep, presenting their strongest shields forward. It was textbook military doctrine, the kind of formation that had won wars for the Vrakan for thousands of years. It was also exactly what Huang Suji had predicted they would do. All ships, execute dispersal pattern, the admiral commanded. Activate full stealth. Let us show them how humans fight. The human fleet scattered like seeds in the wind. 200 ships dove into the nebula's densest regions, vanishing from Vrakan sensors. The Vrakan commanders were confused. This was not how warfare was conducted. Fleets were supposed to face each other, exchange fire, and prove their strength. Running and hiding was cowardly. They had no idea what was about to hit them. Captain Shin Dae-won commanded the dreadnought Retribution, the largest warship humanity had ever built. While the Vrakan designed their ships to look impressive and intimidating, the Retribution was built for one purpose: overwhelming firepower. Every weapon system was designed to kill efficiently, not honorably. Target their command ship, Shin ordered. Fire when ready. The Retribution emerged from the nebula without warning, appearing less than 5,000 kilometers from the Vrakan flagship. At that range, shields meant nothing. The Retribution fired its main railgun, a weapon that accelerated a tungsten rod to a significant fraction of light speed. The rod punched through the Vrakan flagship like it was made of paper. The ship broke apart, its reactor detonating in a flash that temporarily blinded sensors across the battlefield. The Vrakan fleet reeled in shock. Their commander was dead in the first 30 seconds of battle. Before they could reorganize, Lieutenant Baek Jaewon led her fighter squadrons into the attack. Jaewon's mother had died at New Haven, burned alive in her home. Every time Jaewon climbed into her fighter, she saw her mother's face. It made her cold, focused, absolutely lethal. Her squadron came screaming out of the nebula at speeds that should have been suicidal, weaving through radiation storms that would have killed most pilots. They fired missiles that did not just explode but released hundreds of submunitions, each one independently targeting critical systems. 17 Vrakan capital ships died in the first 15 minutes. Their shields were designed to stop energy weapons and traditional missiles. They had never faced kinetic weapons traveling at relativistic speeds or swarm missiles that attacked from hundreds of angles simultaneously. The galaxy watched through observer ships stationed at safe distances. Council observers transmitted everything back to Unity Prime. What they saw defied everything they knew about warfare. The humans were not fighting honorably or following any known conventions. They were fighting to win, using tactics that were brutal, efficient, and terrifying. Dr. Oh Kyungmin's voice came across the open communication channels, broadcast for all to hear. You asked how a young species could fight like this. We will tell you. We are a species that has known war since we lived in caves. We fought with stones, then bronze, then steel, then explosives, then nuclear fire. We nearly destroyed ourselves learning how to kill efficiently. Every generation of humanity has perfected the art of warfare because we had no choice. Survive or die. We chose to survive. The Vrakan fleet tried to fight back, but they were fighting ghosts. Human ships appeared, fired, and vanished back into the nebula before return fire could reach them. The Vrakan used traditional tactics: hold formation, concentrate fire, advance in coordination. These tactics worked perfectly against enemies who fought the same way. Against an enemy that refused to stand still, refused to fight fair, refused to do anything predictable, they were useless. Huang Suji coordinated the battle from her command center on Earth, her calculations feeding directly to Admiral Lee Bora. She saw the battlefield not as individual ships but as a mathematical problem. Every Vraken movement created opportunities. Every formation had weaknesses. She fed targeting solutions to human ships faster than the Vraken could adapt. Their left flank is exposed, she reported. Cruiser Group 3, target their supply ships. Without fuel and ammunition, the big ships are just targets. The human cruisers emerged from the nebula and fired on the Vraken supply vessels. Not the glamorous warships that attracted attention, but the unglamorous support ships that kept fleets operational. 5 supply ships exploded. Suddenly, 100 Vraken warships had to choose between continuing the fight or retreating to resupply. Captain Shin Daewon's Retribution fired again, this time launching what appeared to be asteroids. The Vraken sensors detected them but dismissed them as debris from destroyed ships. By the time they realized the asteroids had been accelerated to relativistic speeds and were under human control, it was too late. 3 more capital ships shattered under the impacts. The Vraken war leader, commanding from a secondary flagship after the first was destroyed, could not understand what was happening. His fleet outnumbered the humans more than 2 to 1. His ships were larger, more powerful, crewed by warriors from a race that had conquered hundreds of worlds. Yet they were being systematically torn apart by an enemy they could barely see. He opened a direct channel to Admiral Lee Bora. How? How can you fight like this? Where is the honor? Where is the courage to face us in open battle? The Admiral's response was cold as space itself. You speak of honor. You burned our children. You murdered civilians. You started this war expecting no consequences. Now you learn what happens when you fight a species that does not care about your rules. We fight to win. We fight to ensure that no other colony burns while the galaxy looks away. Your honor died at New Haven along with 67,000 innocents. She paused, letting her words sink in. You wanted to see what humans are capable of. You wanted to test whether the Council would protect us. You learned that the Council is useless. Now learn what we are capable of when we protect ourselves. The battle raged for 6 hours. Lieutenant Beck Jaiwan's fighter took damage, her shields failing, but she refused to withdraw. She dove her damaged fighter into a Vraken destroyer's bridge, sacrificing herself to kill its command crew. Her wingmates avenged her within seconds, but her death was a reminder that human victories came at a cost too. Admiral Lee Bora watched the casualty reports climb. 127 ships lost. Thousands of crew dead. Every death hurt, every loss mattered. But she could not stop. Would not stop. New Haven demanded justice, and justice required seeing this through to the end. The Vraken fleet tried to retreat. Admiral Lee Bora had anticipated this. Human ships had been quietly moving into position for hours, using microjumps through hyperspace that the Vraken thought were too dangerous to use in combat. When the Vraken tried to flee, they found every escape route blocked. You wanted war, the Admiral broadcast on all channels. Now finish it. Stand and fight, or surrender and face trial. Those are your only options. The Vraken war leader made his choice. All ships, full assault. We die with honor rather than surrender to primitives. The Vraken fleet charged directly at the human positions, abandoning all defensive tactics in a final desperate attack. It was brave. It was honorable. It was also exactly what Admiral Lee Bora wanted. In open space, without the nebula's cover, the Vraken ships were easy targets for human weapons. The slaughter lasted 40 minutes. Of 500 Vraken warships, fewer than 30 escaped, all critically damaged. The rest were debris clouds floating in the nebula, eternal monuments to the folly of underestimating humanity. The galaxy watched in absolute silence. The most powerful military fleet assembled in 800 years had been destroyed. The Vraken Dominion, an empire that had stood for millennia, had been broken in a single afternoon by a species the Council had considered barely civilized. Captain Yuntamin's voice came through on an open broadcast, transmitted across the entire galaxy. While the Vrakan fleet died here, my teams liberated 3 of their occupied worlds and destroyed their primary shipyards. The Vrakan Empire is finished. They have 72 hours to surrender all war criminals responsible for New Haven, or we demonstrate what happens when humanity lays siege to their homeworld. Choose wisely. Admiral Lee Bora surveyed the battlefield, the wreckage of hundreds of ships, the bodies of thousands of beings who had died today. She felt no joy in the victory. Only grim satisfaction that New Haven had been avenged. All ships, stand down from combat alert. Begin recovery operations for survivors, human and Vrakan both. We are warriors, not monsters. We will show mercy to those who surrender, even if they showed none to our people. She opened a private channel to Earth. Mission accomplished. The Vrakan fleet is destroyed. Casualties are significant but acceptable. Recommend we press for immediate surrender before they can regroup. The response came from Huang Suji, speaking for Earth's High Command. Understood, Admiral. The galaxy is terrified. The Council is paralyzed. The Vrakan government is in chaos. Continue operations until they surrender completely. New Haven will not be forgotten. Make sure the entire galaxy remembers what happens when humans say never again and mean it. Admiral Lee Bora closed the channel and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Council was learning a hard lesson. Justice delayed was justice denied. And, when justice was denied, species like humanity would take it by force. The galaxy would never be the same again. 6 weeks after the Battle of Crimson Nebula, the Vrakan Dominion collapsed. Their military shattered, their economy in ruins from Captain Yuntamin's ongoing sabotage operations, their government torn apart by internal fighting over who should bear responsibility for the disaster. The empire that had stood for thousands of years fractured into a dozen squabbling successor states within days. The Vrakan Provisional Government, such as it was, sent a message to Earth. They surrendered completely. Every demand humanity made was accepted without negotiation. The officers responsible for New Haven were handed over. Reparations were promised. Territory was ceded. The proud Vrakan warrior culture bent knee to a species they had dismissed as primitives only months before. The Galactic Council convened once again, this time to witness the trial of the New Haven war criminals. Kim Hanna presided as prosecutor, presenting evidence that left no doubt of guilt. Footage, testimonies, intercepted communications that showed the massacre was deliberate and planned. Commander Park Juno took the stand. He described, in careful detail, watching the bombardment begin. The desperate evacuation. The choice of who to save and who to leave behind. His voice never wavered, but those who looked closely could see his hands shaking. I was a soldier, he said. I accepted that death might come for me in battle. What I could not accept, what no civilized being should accept, is the deliberate murder of children. They gunned down families in their homes. They bombed hospitals. They hunted teenagers through burning streets like it was sport. This was not war. This was genocide. Dr. Choi Mira spoke for the victims. She had spent weeks compiling stories, testimonies from survivors, reconstructing the lives that were lost. She told the council about her daughters. About her husband. About the thousands of others who died that day, each one a person with dreams and hopes and futures that were stolen. My oldest daughter wanted to be a doctor, Mira said, her voice breaking slightly. She spent hours studying alien biology, fascinated by the diversity of life in the galaxy. My youngest loved music. She was learning to play an instrument we bought from a trader, something from a species halfway across the galaxy. They wanted to be part of this community, to contribute to the great galactic civilization we were told existed. She looked directly at the Vrakan officers in the detention field. You killed them. You killed thousands like them. You destroyed a colony of peaceful farmers and scientists because you wanted to prove you could. Because you thought no one would stop you. You were right about the council. But, you were wrong about humanity. The trial lasted 3 days. The verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts. The sentences were severe: life imprisonment under human custody, to be served on a prison station built in orbit around New Haven's ruins. The Vrakan officers would spend the rest of their lives staring at the world they destroyed. But, the trial was only the beginning. The real battle was happening in the council chambers. Councillor Velthanes attempted to reassert the old order. The tragedy of New Haven was regrettable, and justice has been served. However, we must address the larger issue. Earth violated numerous council conventions during their conflict with the Vrakan. Stealth technology, sabotage operations, refusal to fight according to established rules of engagement. The council must establish that such tactics cannot be tolerated. Kim Hanna stood slowly. She had been waiting for this. Councillor Velthanes, with all due respect, which I assure you is none at all, the council has no moral authority to lecture Earth about conventions. You sat silent while 67,000 civilians were slaughtered. You refused to act when we begged for help. You only convened when we took justice into our own hands. The time for lectures is over. The council has maintained peace for 800 years, Velthanes protested. Peace? Admiral Lee Bora stepped forward, still wearing her military uniform. You call it peace? Tell that to the species the Vrakan occupied. Tell that to the colonies raided by pirates while the council looked away. Tell that to every small species that suffered injustice because enforcing your rules was inconvenient. You did not maintain peace. You maintained comfortable apathy. Councillor Karaxi spoke up. Admiral Lee Bora is correct. The council has failed in its fundamental purpose. We exist to protect member species and maintain justice. We did neither. The question before us is not whether to punish Earth for its actions, but whether we can reform the council into something worthy of its ideals. The chamber erupted in argument. The old guard insisted that hierarchy and tradition must be maintained. The younger councillors, along with representatives from smaller species, demanded change. The debate raged for hours. Finally, Kim Hanna called for silence. The council can debate all you want. Earth will do what we should have done from the beginning. We are forming a mutual defense pact with any species willing to join. If you are attacked, we will respond. If you call for help, we will come. We will not wait for committees or votes or diplomatic niceties. This is our promise. She pulled up a document on the holographic display. 12 species have already signed. More approach us daily. They see what the council has become, a debating society that takes no action while the innocent suffer. We offer an alternative. Join us, reform the council, or step aside. Those are your choices. The threat was clear. If the council did not change, Earth would create a rival organization that actually enforced its principles. The council would become irrelevant. Velthanes recognized he had lost. The old order was dying, whether he accepted it or not. What does Earth propose? Restructuring, Kim Hanna said. A security directorate with real authority. Member species contribute military forces. When aggression occurs, the directorate responds immediately, not after months of debate. We enforce the laws the council claims to uphold. And, we do it without asking permission from beings who have forgotten what justice means. The vote took 2 weeks. In the end, the council agreed to reform. A new security directorate was established. Earth gained a permanent seat, along with several other species willing to actually fight for peace rather than just talk about it. Velthanes and many of the old guard retired, their age of ceremonial governance ended. The Vraken's former territories were placed under protection treaties. The species they had oppressed were guaranteed safety, their development supported rather than exploited. Captain Untamin supervised the transition, ensuring no power vacuum invited new predators. 1 year after the New Haven massacre, a memorial station was completed in orbit around the devastated world. Thousands gathered for the dedication ceremony, humans and aliens alike. The station held a massive monument, a black stone wall inscribed with 67,000 names. Dr. Choi Mira stood before it, tears streaming down her face as she read the names of her family. She placed flowers at the base, wildflowers from Earth that somehow survived the journey across the stars. All around her, survivors and family members did the same, creating a garden of remembrance in the cold of space. Commander Park Juno stood at attention nearby, his dress uniform perfect, his face carved from stone. He had not forgiven himself for those he could not save. He never would. But, he had ensured their deaths meant something, that their sacrifice changed the galaxy. Kim Hannah watched from the observation deck. Captain Untamin stood beside her, both of them exhausted from the year of fighting, negotiating, and rebuilding. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Yoon asked quietly. "The violence, the deaths, all of it." Kim Hannah was silent for a long moment, watching the memorial ceremony below. "We gave them justice. We ensured no other colony burns while the galaxy watches. We forced change that should have happened centuries ago. But, you are right to question. Every death we caused weighs on us. Every Vraken soldier who died following orders, every crew member we lost, every civilian caught in the crossfire. They haunt me." She turned to face him. "But, if we had done nothing? If we had accepted the Council's empty condolences and moved on? Then, New Haven would have died for nothing. The Vraken would have struck again. Other predators would have learned that human lives are cheap. We chose the hard path, the bloody path, because it was the only path that led to real change." Below, a young human child approached the memorial. She was one of the New Haven survivors, barely 6 years old. She carried a small stuffed toy, burned and damaged but carefully preserved. She placed it at the memorial's base, her hand touching one specific name. An alien child, from one of the worlds Earth had liberated from Vraken occupation, joined her. The alien child placed flowers beside the toy. They stood together in silence, two children from different species, both saved by humanity's refusal to accept injustice. Admiral Lee Bora arrived for the ceremony, her fleet docked nearby. She had spent the year hunting down Vraken remnants, ensuring no warlords rose from the Empire's ashes. Her ships bore scars from dozens of small battles, but her crew was intact. They had learned to wage war efficiently but not cruelly, to be strong but not monstrous. She approached Kim Hannah and Captain Yoon. "The Directorate is operational. 20 species have pledged ships and crews. We conducted our first joint operation last week, stopping a pirate raid on a trade colony. No casualties, raiders captured and awaiting trial. It is working." "Good," Kim Hannah said. "Make sure they understand the principles. We fight to protect, not to conquer. We use force only when necessary, but we do not hesitate when it is necessary. The galaxy needs to learn the difference between weakness and patience." The ceremony concluded with a moment of silence. 67,000 names glowing on the memorial wall, each one representing a life lost, a future stolen, a family shattered. The silence stretched across the galaxy as species everywhere paused to remember. Then, slowly, life resumed. The memorial station became a destination, a place of pilgrimage. Species came to see the monument, to learn the story of New Haven, to understand what happens when injustice goes unanswered. Humanity's reputation changed. No longer were they seen as primitive newcomers. They were seen as dangerous, yes, but also as protectors. As beings who would stand up for the weak when no one else would. As warriors who remembered what civilized species had forgotten, that peace requires not just the absence of war, but the presence of justice. Dr. Choi Mira returned to her research, studying alien biology again. But, now she also served as an advisor to the Security Directorate, ensuring that military operations considered civilian welfare. Her grief would never fully heal, but she channeled it into purpose. Commander Park Juno took command of the memorial station itself, ensuring it remained a place of remembrance rather than becoming a tourist attraction. Every visitor heard the stories. Every name had its history told. The dead would not be forgotten. Captain Yoon Taemin continued his special operations work, but now he trained teams from other species. He taught them the arts of stealth, sabotage, and unconventional warfare. Not to encourage violence, but to give the weak tools to resist oppression. Kim Hana remained Earth's representative to the Council, now respected rather than dismissed. She fought every day to ensure the reforms held, that the Directorate remained accountable, that the Council never again chose comfortable apathy over difficult justice. Huang Suji left military service and became a teacher, instructing the next generation in strategy and tactics. But she also taught them ethics, ensuring they understood that power without morality was tyranny, that strength without compassion was savagery. The galaxy had learned its lesson. New Haven's ashes had fertilized a new era, one where justice mattered, where the innocent were protected, where aggression faced consequences. The old order of ceremonial peace and unenforced laws was dead. In its place grew something stronger, more honest, more just. The Galactic Council would never forget what happened when humanity said never again and meant it. They had been shocked by Earth's savage vengeance. But, in time, they came to understand. Sometimes, savagery in defense of the innocent is the most civilized response of all. The stars shone over New Haven's ruins, silent witness to tragedy and triumph both. And, on Earth, a species once dismissed as primitive stood guard, ensuring that the lesson written in blood and fire would never need to be taught again.